Can I not only help rescue the huge number of North Americans that are in a supply chain to the medical industrial complex where they will be treated for one or more of 22 avoidable ailments that a huge number of people in North America are currently essentially incubating, gestating somewhere in their body without needing to rely on the Kool-Aid that Musk is wanting all Americans to now start to inject to live a healthier life. I blogged about how I propose to do that in a video that I posted a few days ago. But I also want to demonstrate how you can better control, if not cure, multiple sclerosis. I'm going to hopefully demonstrate that over the next little while, because in helping to rescue people from the grip of the medical industrial complex who operate on a paradigm of attend to the avoidable, avoid preventing the profitable. I want to prevent the profitable. But in order to demonstrate that, I need to quit medicating my MS with clinical cannabis, medicinal marijuana, because I get the medicinal marijuana munchies. I get the clinical cannabis cravings. I can't control my appetite. I binge at night on healthy foods, nuts predominantly, but ends up putting on excess body fat. I've allowed that to happen. I'm now going to show how to lose that excess body fat. But in order to do that, I gotta quit medicating my MS with clinical cannabis, medicinal marijuana. I'm weaning myself off that now. And in weaning myself off that, will I in fact be able to show that you can control MS, as I've done over my life, by removing myself from the toxic environments that is at the core of so much MS, where studies have indicated that people that are hit with MS have more psychological trauma in their life than the general population. And it doesn't matter how severe that trauma is. It's whether or not it's a continuum of it that people can't fucking escape from. I was able to escape from that trauma. I was able to find a way out of the stroke-like partial paralysis that I was once hit with. Yeah. Which developed just with a little bit of drop foot, where I lost the reflex to pick up my toe. I was walking across pavers in front of the RCMP where I had been abused for years. I was walking across pavers to my car and I had drop foot. I lost the reflex to pick up my toe. I tripped. I was going to see my psychiatrist whose care I was under at the time. And I talked to him about it. And he said, you should pay attention to this. This is fucking important. But I had a more urgent thing to do that weekend, right? Something that I could control, something that I could feel good about accomplishing. I mean, I needed to hobble in and out of the bathtub as I did this renovation project, replacing a plastic liner with new tile around the bathtub. Took a lot of work, and I was so happy Monday morning when I got it all done. It was grouted, curtain rod was up, I had a shower. I was just so fucking happy I got that work done. And then I went out into the kitchen to make some oatmeal, pulling boiled water out of the microwave to make oatmeal. Discovered my fingers were fucking tingling, the same side as I had that drop foot. So I finally got my ass down to my GP. I described what was happening, and she said, "What? Walk down to the end of the hall and back. Show me what's going on." And I only got to the end of the hall where the GP said, "You should sit down, Michael." I sat down so she could then tell me that you could have suffered a stroke on Friday, Michael. Yeah, hard to believe. Hard for her to believe, because she didn't follow the FAST protocol then, which meant call a fucking ambulance, be delivered to the emergency room with just your vitals. She didn't do that. She asked me, can you get to Vancouver General Hospital, get to the emergency room, be assessed? Have you got a car? I said, yeah, it's close. I can walk to there. You can drive to Vancouver General Hospital. That's what she did. Sent me off on my own. But I didn't drive to Vancouver General Hospital because I would have had to park in a parking garage where I would have had to walk a long way from 12th Avenue to 10th Avenue emergency room to be assessed. So I decided I'll just park at home, save some money, and kind of a similar distance to walk to the emergency room on 10th from where I lived as opposed to park at 12th. So I walked down 11th Avenue and I have a choice. I could cross there at a T intersection uncontrolled, or I could cross at 12th, which would take me out of the way, or at 10th Avenue to the north, which would be en route. And what do? I cross on a fucking T intersection uncontrolled with potentially suffering a stroke. But I'm doing it safely, right? I'm paying attention to traffic. I want to make sure that when 12th Avenue turns green that I'm out of the way of traffic. And when it turned green, I went to get out of the way of traffic, and I discovered that, you know how important it is to spring off your feet to be able to jog, run, walk normally? Do you know how important that is? And how I discovered that I no longer had that? Yeah. When I finally fought my way in to be assessed by Vancouver General Hospital emergency room doctors who were in a bun fight with my doctor about seeing me because, well, she didn't totally abandon me. She faxed in a letter to Vancouver General Hospital saying who I was, what I was experiencing, and, well, the diagnosis and what they needed to do to help me out, right? Emergency room doctors are delivered patients with simply their vitals described, not provided with a diagnosis of what the fuck they then need to do. So they naturally pushed back. They didn't want to see me. I sat in the emergency room for a couple hours until finally I was able to be seen by a neurologist who put me into a CAT scan, discovered a growth on my brainstem. I'm admitted. And the next morning, Tuesday, I discovered I can't fucking balance anymore. To wash my foot, I need to sit my ass down on a little fold-down bench. And the tingling in my fingers had progressed to greater impediments. I had a hard time washing myself down my right side from my left. Not just my hand, but my arm. And that partial paralysis extended right up to my fucking face. Yeah, my fucking face was out of symmetry. The muscles on the left side of my face were no longer doing what they needed to do. My face was drooping. I end up with this warped Salvador Dali kind of image looking back at me. Terrifying. But not as terrifying as after an MRI, a spinal tap, they then give me fuzzy photocopied material telling me what the fuck to expect now that I've been diagnosed with multiple sclerosis. That if you don't need a cane right now, you will. You'll progress then to needing a walker and then a wheelchair. But it had good news, right? Really good news in terms of how I wouldn't have to rush around to find a toilet if I needed to do my business anymore, right? Because I'd be pissing through a catheter tube and shitting into a fucking bag and I would die prematurely. And this is what the fuck they tell you when you are fucking diagnosed with multiple sclerosis. When science says that if you're hit with multiple sclerosis, avoid negative shit in your life. Otherwise, it'll come back. If you find positive stuff, it won't come back. Because multiple sclerosis, as I found when I was given a series of steroids which shut down the attack and returned my function, I discovered that it's a process of which you're hit, you suffer disability, but then it goes into remission and you regain a lot of your disability. But in time, if you're exposed to negative shit, you can have another attack, more disability. And with every attack, every loss of disability, you gain some of it back, but you accumulate a deficit of disability. Not me. You can see where I am now after that. Because I was able to find something positive. As the science indicates, I was able to find a positive escape, a rescue from the trauma of what the fuck they were telling me I could expect from MS. I was able to rescue myself from that trauma. They helped me through the steroids, which returned so much of my function. And I then just ran back into life. Traveling, scuba diving, sailing, swimming, running, bicycle riding. Said, I'm not going to let this MS stand in the way. I'm just going to continue to live as if I don't have it. If I'm hit with MS again and I suffer disability, well, Dr. Zamboni will be able to cure me. Yeah, Dr. Zamboni, the year before I was diagnosed that I had read about in 2008, he had said that you can get rid of the symptoms of multiple sclerosis by putting a stent in the jugular vein, opening it up, increasing circulation to the brain, flush out the bad voodoo that is causing the symptoms of multiple sclerosis. That's the gift that I was given to counteract the trauma of what I was being told by the medical doctors. I was able to park that trauma. Say, if I get hit again, Dr. Zamboni will be able to cure me. The procedure has been found not to be effective, but it was effective for me in terms of avoiding the trauma of what the fuck the doctors were telling me, avoiding the trauma of understanding that I have MS that could potentially severely disable me, if not kill me prematurely. I was able to deal with that trauma by parking it. And I hope that by ending smoking, the clinical cannabis, the medicinal marijuana for MS, to medicate symptoms that I no longer have, that by getting rid of that, I can hopefully demonstrate that I can both control my appetite and control MS. Because the science is quite clear. People that are hit with MS have a history of psychological trauma in their life at a much higher degree than the regular population. And it doesn't matter the degree of the psychological trauma. You would think that, right? That it would be the big events that potentially would trigger MS from arriving, but it's not. It's a continuation of abuse that people experience and can't escape from, can't find a rescue from. That is at the core of so much multiple sclerosis. Just look at the data. Women that were born in the 1930s were hit with multiple sclerosis at a rate of 1.9 to 1, women to men. Women born in the 1980s now experience multiple sclerosis at a much higher rate, 3.2 to 1 women to men. What is that? It seems obvious to me. People born in the 1930s generally were homemakers. They didn't work in the labor force. But with the world wars and the need for labor, more women entered the labor force. And that's increased to where we are now. So that those born in the 80s are totally enmeshed in the labor force, engaged in activities outside the home, like at gyms, on the street, in politics, where women are abused, much more so than men. They can't escape that abuse. When you have a vitamin D deficiency or insufficiency like I had, I'm fair. I avoid the fucking sun to avoid sunburns. So I put on sunscreen when I'm near the sun. Cuts down my synthesis of vitamin D. I lived for over a decade in the high Arctic. Now, lot of sun up there at this time of year. When the sun does come out, you generally need to have clothes on. You don't have a lot of skin exposed. If you do have skin exposed and you're fair, you fucking put on sunscreen like I would do when I go south. Vitamin D insufficiency, deficiency is at the core of putting you at risk of developing multiple sclerosis. The science is quite clear on it. So I take a supplement, 4,000 IU of vitamin D a day, whether or not I'm down here or up in cloudy, rainy Vancouver. The other element that I demonstrate is at the core of multiple sclerosis hitting me is that after continuum of abuse at the RCMP, where I have recordings of what I experienced, and I think it's time to finally share these, to put in context what I experienced, which was just psychological abuse and an assault. I have this on tape. And when you're exposed to experience of that with a deficit of vitamin D, and you also seek to find recourse, some relief from managers for the abuse you're experiencing, and you're abandoned, where I have a recording of that conversation as well, where I was told, sort it out on your own. Manager wasn't going to get involved with my petty little complaints of being abused, discriminated against. I want to give people hope, like Dr. Zamboni gave me hope when I was diagnosed with multiple sclerosis, that it can be reversed. Well, I've demonstrated that it can be reversed. Not through Dr. Zamboni, but simply through vitamin D, avoid trauma, find support. Will you support me in helping to make the America's healthcare amazing? Will you support me in helping to rescue so many people from the trauma of being in a supply chain where the medical industrial complex will be very happy to treat one or more of the 22 avoidable ailments of adipose that so many people are currently incubating in gestating that don't need to occur if people can lose their excess body fat. Will you support me in that? Because if you support me in that, I can hopefully and demonstrate that. With simply vitamin D, you can keep your MS in remission. You don't need to shoot up with the medications that the medical industrial complex wants you to shoot up with. Very profitable, but I don't use them. Haven't needed them. Steroids were critical, but finding a way to replace the trauma of what I was being told with the hope that Dr. Zamboni, an Italian physician, gave me, believing that if MS came back, Dr. Zamboni can cure me. Yeah, this is where I am now. So thank you for supporting me. Let's see where this goes. Whether or not I can demonstrate what I hope I can demonstrate if I get the fuck off of the clinical cannabis, the medicinal marijuana, avoid the cravings and the munchies. Demonstrate how you can self-rescue yourself from being a supply chain to the medical industrial complex. And if you get hit with multiple sclerosis, I can also demonstrate how to self-rescue. But you got to get the fuck out of the trauma you're exposed to. I'll be blogging more about this and more later. Hopefully MS will stay in remission, but withdrawing from the clinical cannabis won't risk it returning